welcome back to Fast Freddy RC, and today I want to talk to you about the Boomerang. Yes, the Boomerang. So you may be wondering, why is the Super Sabre sitting here? Well, let me tell you. So last year, I picked up the Boomerang because I knew I wanted to bring this to the channel, and it's one of the most iconic cars that Tamiya ever produced, and it's extremely popular. But I've got a number of projects on the go, so I haven't got to it yet. Now, in the meantime, I had watched a video that Keith from RC Icons had produced where he was going over an original Super Sabre that he was restoring, and I have to say the Super Sabre to me was always one of the coolest looking cars that Tamiya produced because it was a little bit more futuristic. It had red, my favorite color is red. I love the look, and I said to him, you know, it would be super cool if they re-released that one. Well, what do you know? Wasn't long after that they announced that the Super Sabre was going to be released. Now here's one of the coolest things. This Super Sabre is the first time that Tamiya has re-released it since 1987. This has been re-released in 2008, it was re-released in 2017, but this has never come out. As of now, for 2023, this kit has been released, and it's the first time since 1987, and the reason I'm repeating that is it's just too cool to have in my hands a kit that hasn't been produced since then. Okay, now that we've got that out of the way, we've got these two kits, I started looking at both of these and kind of looking at the chassis, and unfortunately or fortunately, it started to take me down a rabbit hole. So let me take you back. So in 1985, Tamiya came out with the Hot Shot. Now, as we all know, the Hot Shot is an extremely iconic car from Tamiya because it was the first four-wheel drive car that they ever produced. After the Hot Shot, they came out with the Super Shot, and then they brought out the Hot Shot 2. Again, that's all based on the Hot Shot chassis. But what was really different about the original Hot Shot is that it had a monoshock on the front and a monoshock system in the rear. And even to this day, it's probably one of the most complicated rear end systems that Tamiya ever produced on one of their cars. Now, let's skip ahead a bit. So what did they do after the Hot Shot? The chassis that these two cars on was the first evolution of that original chassis. And what's even cooler? These are the only two cars that came out on that updated chassis. So what was the next evolution of that chassis? Well, a lot of us Tamiya fans know it was the Thundershot. The Thundershot was an updated version of the Hot Shot, an updated version of the Super Sabre and Boomerang, and that particular chassis has been used on more cars than any of the other chassis up to this date. Now, the original Hot Shot, I mentioned that there were 3, but there are actually now 2 more. Only because Tamiya came out with the Blockhead Motors version of the Hot Shot 2, and now to be released early this year, 2024, is the newly released Hot Shot 2, which again is another car that hasn't been released since it was originally produced back in the 80s, which is again super cool. So when the Thundershot chassis came out, well, we obviously know the Thundershot, but the other cars it came out with was the Thunder Dragon, the Terra Scorcher, the Fire Dragon, and in 2022 they released the Saint Dragon on that same chassis. So what's kind of cool here is you're seeing an evolution of that original Hot Shot chassis, and it just went through some of these different vehicles. So essentially, this chassis is known as the Boomerang chassis, which is another reason why this is sitting here, because technically this is a Boomerang chassis. It's a Super Sabre, but it is a Boomerang essentially at its core. So we've got our Hot Shot chassis, we've got the Boomerang chassis, and then we have the Thundershot chassis and all of the vehicles that came out with the different versions. So I just thought it was super, super cool. And like I said, I went down a rabbit hole, was getting kind of interested to see how this all went. And to know that these two are the only ones that were ever produced on this chassis, I just think is just too cool. So in an upcoming video, I have to tell you that, originally this was going to be coming out, but this is going to be on the back burner because I'm really excited to unbox the Super Sabre and do a full build series on this car. Just because it is just too cool for me. And again, knowing that it hasn't been out since '87, it's just going to be so cool to be able to unbox this and build this for you. So that's my little ramble about the Boomerang. I just think it's a really cool story of the history of these vehicles. So until next time, we'll see you in another video.